morning, everyone. Good morning. Hello. Hello. Hello and good morning. Do you think that it's an acceptable form of discipline to smack a child of 12 months old? 18 months perhaps? Well, Alan is a father of 6 who does exactly that. Wendy smacks her 15-month toddler. But does smacking work, or is it physical abuse that leaves children emotionally damaged in later life? Rachel, you believe that it's acceptable to smack your child, and your husband ended up for a short time held in prison.
That's correct. Exactly what happened was my husband took my daughter to the dentist on Christmas Eve. She'd had toothache and been
How
up.
old is your daughter?
She's 8 years old. She'd been up with toothache for 2 nights, and obviously she was scared, as we all are. I'm frightened myself of the dentist as well, but she had said that she would be fine. We'd gradually persuaded her to go to the dentist, and she agreed to go, and she said, "It's all right, Mum, I'll be fine."
Yeah.
And so 9 o'clock on Christmas Eve, my husband phoned the dentist and he said, "Bring her up straight away. You've only got a short time. If you get here by 11, I'll have a look." So he took her up to the dentist. I wasn't there at the dentist, so I don't know exactly what did happen, obviously. I had my other 2 children of 6 and 1 at home with me. So an hour went by, I hadn't heard anything. My daughter had gone off with her dad, quite the thing, got into the taxi. She was quite happy, and I asked her, say 3 or 4 times, "Are you sure you don't want me to come with you?" And she said, "No, Mum, don't be silly. I'm all right now, I'm not worried." So came to 12 o'clock, I got a phone call from my husband to say that my daughter wouldn't go into the dentist. That she'd had a little bit of a tantrum. So I don't like to criticise her publicly and say that she behaved outrageously or anything, because I think it's unfair. She's only 8 years old. To tell the whole country that she threw a tantrum or something.
Oh, but 8-year-olds do that anyway. I mean, Rachel, adults throw tantrums, don't they?
If I say something about that sort
but
of
okay, but she was a little bit difficult about not wanting to go.
She was difficult about it, but obviously I don't know exactly what happened.
And what did your husband do?
My husband said that he'd smacked her bottom because she'd had a wee bit of a tantrum.
How had he smacked her bottom?
Well, he didn't go into big detail. To me, it's not an issue, smacking.
No, but it can be an issue about how, whether it's just a smack like that, or whether it's a kind of laying over her knees.
He was in a public phone box.
Okay.
So he said that he was going to bring her home. So I thought nothing of it. It was Christmas Eve. I said, "Oh, could you get the bread and milk on the way back?" Because we're not going to have any bread and milk for Christmas Day. Because it was kind of last-minute shopping. So we got back home, and my daughter said, "Oh, Mum, my tooth is still sore." So I telephoned the dentist. I said, "I'm sorry that there was a wee bit of a to-do. Can I bring her back up and get the tooth out?" So he said, "If you're quick, be here by 1 o'clock." So I brought her up. She went into the dentist chair. She had a tooth out. During the dentist said to me when I arrived, "You know that the speech therapist next door phoned the social services." And I says, "Oh, don't be so, it's ridiculous." I said, "Let's get the tooth out." So on he went and got the tooth out. After he'd extracted the tooth, the telephone rang. My daughter's mouth was bleeding, she just had a tooth out. And he came in and he said, "That's the police looking for your name and address." And I thought, "Oh, this is really getting silly." Because he's only smacked her. I thought nothing of it. And my argument is if he had always been abusive, would I have thought nothing of it?
But the police arrived?
No.
What happened
They didn't arrive. I left the dentist. On the way out, I met my health visitor. So I have 2 younger children. I've got one who is still seen by
What did the health
visitor.
visitor say to you?
And she's known me since my daughter was born for 8 years. And I don't know if she knew anything about it, but by then I burst into tears because it all got on top of me. And I said, "The police have phoned for her address." So what happened then, I said, no, I'm going to go over to the police station because I'm not going to have the police turning up at my door.
What eventually happened when the police did talk to you and your
So
husband?
I walked over to the police station, and from then, well, the police didn't let me go till, they wouldn't let me make a phone call till 6 o'clock in the evening. So my husband didn't know where I was till 6 o'clock. What happened was, at 6 o'clock, they said to me, you can phone your husband now. And I said, no, because you've kept me waiting this long, you phone them. So they phoned my husband, they said, could you bring the other 2 children up in a taxi? So he got in a taxi with my 6-year-old and 1-year-old up to the police station. Then he was taken into an interview room. The other 2 children were taken with me into another room. I know that my husband was kept in the police station in a cell till 11:30. And then at night, on Christmas Eve, where they charged him then.
So he was arrested?
He was basically, well, not exactly as you
an arrest is if he's arrested, he was charged and he was held in a police cell.
That's right.
For how long?
Till 11:30. So 6 o'clock in the evening till 11:30 at night.
And then what happened?
He wasn't allowed to come home. He was
at
told not to
11:30
come.
at night?
Yes.
Where did he go then?
He went up to his father's house.
Oh, he wasn't allowed to go to your house with the children?
His brother was told to collect some belongings from my house. And so his brother came down, collected belongings, because I didn't go home till 8:30 in the evening. I was told that my husband wouldn't be coming back for 2 weeks, that if he tried to come near the house, he would take the children into care.
And where was he for those 2 weeks?
He stayed at his father's for 2 weeks. He had 3 one-hour visits, supervised visits.
What did you feel when all this was happening?
Just, it was as though it wasn't happening, because he hasn't got a criminal record. I haven't got a criminal record.
And how was your daughter?
Well, she was distraught, absolutely distraught.
Distraught, not...
She wouldn't open her Christmas presents because he wasn't there. He was only allowed to make telephone contact.
Right, distraught not because she'd been smacked, but because her father was being kept from her.
Because
by the police and social services.
If I go on a bit, I'll not cover the 2 weeks in detail. He had 3 one-hour visits, and then we were called to a case conference by the social work department. So my husband presumed that he was still under the charge, released without. He didn't have bail. After 4 days, he phoned the social work department because we didn't hear from anybody. Nobody telephoned me to ask me how I was. Nobody phoned my husband to see if he had even kept away from the house. So 4 days after, when the Christmas period, he said the offices must be open. He telephoned, to which eventually they replied that they would allow him to visit the house so long as he was supervised by somebody.
But the outcome in the end was that he wasn't... no proceedings were taken against him?
Yes.
Oh, they were?
They were. What happened is that he then, via his solicitor, realised that it had gone into the process of being sent to what is in Scotland, Procurator Fiscal. I don't know if it's the same in... So I live in Scotland, although I'm English. So a report was sent to the Procurator Fiscal, who then decides whether or not there's a charge to be met. But that process took 4 months.
And what did they decide?
They charged my husband with assault, but on the basis of statements made by people to the fact that he had repeatedly smacked her up and down the legs, etc.
On this occasion?
On this occasion.
In the dentist?
In the dentist.
People gave evidence to that effect?
People gave evidence.
And what happened?
Against him.
What happened to your husband?
What happened was, after the 2 weeks, the case conference, my husband was told that if he wasn't to come back to the house for a further 6 weeks, or the children would be taken into care. It wasn't a court order to keep him out of the house, just that the children would be taken away. So I came back home. My daughter said, "Where's Dad, Mum?" You said he'd be coming back today. So I said, he's not coming back for another 6 weeks unless the lady comes with him to the house. So the evening visit came. I arranged so that the dad could be there for bedtime so that he could put them to bed, because that's what he usually did. So tried to keep it as normal as possible, because you get into a thing where you don't really think about what's happening. You just try and you just get on with everything as if nothing's happened, really. So he was up putting her to bed, and I could hear her sobbing, so could the social worker, saying, "Daddy, it can't be true that you're not coming back for 6 weeks. Why are they doing this?" Which gave me the feeling that, really, it was obviously her father she was missing. She wasn't saying, "Why did you smack me? Why did you smack me?"
Do you support what your husband did?
No, but I think people do a lot of silly things. Parents can be very silly. I mean, we're all human. Even though my husband's a school teacher, he's still a human being. He's not some other person.
Is
because
it
he's a
acceptable to
school
smack
teacher.
an 18-year-old?
An 18-year-old?
An 8-year-old,
An
I beg your
8-year-old?
pardon.
Eventually. Depends, really. You know, I mean, it's just life, isn't it? It's not something that might happen or might not
What she meant by
happen.
eventually. What do you mean by eventually?
Eventually, I think if they, you know, I mean, you tell them 3 or 4 times, don't do that. And, I mean, they're just kids, so maybe eventually you would smack them.
Well, that's the same as domestic violence then. Your husband or your wife tells you to do something 3 or 4 times, and when you don't do it, they punch you.
But punching is different from smacking.
No, there's no difference.
There is.
There is no difference.
There is a lot of
smack
difference.
or a hit, a punch or a kick is physical
To make
violence.
an issue of
There is
smacking
no difference.
belittles domestic violence.
It don't belittle nothing.
It does.
It don't belittle
It
domestic
belittles
violence.
domestic violence.
Selina?
It's a matter of discipline, isn't it? I mean, yes, I've smacked my children, but it doesn't get to the point where I'm outrageous. I mean, there's a difference. You're going to smack a child, my child knows when and if I'm going to smack that child. I don't just lash out.
It's a threat over their head, though, isn't it?
Do you not think, though, that in this day and age now, we know that there are more ways of communicating with people in general, let alone children, that whether they're 18 months or 8 years old, can't you communicate with people to get them to do things and to influence them?
People are so individual, though.
We're not talking about people, we're talking about children.
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 But they're people. A child, they're so individual. You can get to one
They're
child.
people.
Are talking.
Oh, yeah, you say they're children. I correct you saying these people are children, because you're saying people, it sounds acceptable to smack them, but you corrected me, you're saying they are people. Children
Okay,
are people.
children.
You can't hit adults.
That's it. You can't hit... If I hit you, you can do me. Do you know what I mean? You can take me to court and everything. But if I hit a child, it's all right. Oh, I'm teaching them how to behave.
But hitting is
But if you hit
different.
me as an adult, you're teaching me how to behave.
But you
You
should
can't
be able
make
to
a distinction.
understand-
Hang on.
You should be able to understand. If I tried to tell you what you're doing is unacceptable to me, you know that you've upset me, you've hurt my feelings, you stop doing it. A child
But if I
won't
don't?
recognise that.
But if I don't, are you going to smack me?
No, but I can go and
There's
speak
no,
to other
see, there you
people.
go. No, because I'm the same size as you.
Exactly,
If I'm 3 foot under you, you're going to go whack.
Yes.
Because
My
I didn't do what
child-
you
Let her
said.
finish.
If my child doesn't listen to me, where can I go to say, excuse me, but my child refuses to eat her breakfast. My child keeps throwing her breakfast on the floor. Who am I supposed to go to make her eat her breakfast?
Don't
I
go
need
to
to
no
know
one. You had the child. You had the baby. You don't go to no one. You learn to
Where does she go to? She wants to know where she goes to, Stephen, to make sure the child has the breakfast.
Yeah, I
Hang on, my love, Marlene.
I think a child to hit a child when they're too young, it's they don't understand that. Say they go to they go to an oven, yeah, and they shouldn't go there. Smacking them for that reason is when they're too young. They don't understand they're not supposed to go to the oven. I think it's better to pull them away when they're too young.
You're saying it's unacceptable to smack a child?
Too young.
Selena?
And also, I think I'd only think to smack a child at a last resort if you try the other avenues first.
Alan?
A last resort. I think a last resort is exactly when it becomes dangerous. When you've lost your temper. I've asked you 4 times to do it.
Lost
now
your
do
temper?
it. Yeah, that's right.
Lost
If you
your
say it's a
temper?
last resort, that's
So you're
right.
acting in temper? So you're out of... Temper means you're in temper, not the child. You've lost your temper. You are out of control.
I'm sorry, Robert, you
Come on.
misunderstood me.
Well, you
because-
said lost your
No, I
temper.
said that's the time not to do it. You didn't
Yeah.
understand. I said that's
All
the
right,
time,
okay.
not the very time not to do it.
It's not what I heard.
The
It don't make a
exact time.
difference.
No,
It's
it
you
does. It'll
losing
be
your
horrific.
rag.
It'll be horrific to smack somebody in temper. Of
course it
Ask
would,
you
yeah.
4 times. It's a lot. The first infraction, you then apply whatever the appropriate sanctions in your household. To wait to the 4th or 5th time when you've lost it, when you've lost your temper, is exceptionally dangerous for children.
I think with parents in particular, it's down to the fact that they haven't got time to deal with the situation, and children are bored, and their answer is the child gets bored, does something wrong, and then gets smacked for it because the parent hasn't got time to deal with the situation. I run children's dance shows all over the country. This is what I do. I mean, we put on dance shows in the West End and up north, and the children that come from this are dance, and they run. Their discipline is immaculate. You know, they're already going to an activity. So I'm a believer that children should be involved inactivities, so then they've got the ability, if you like, to get on with something that they need to, because their parents are busy. You know,
The one thing we want to know about... Come on, Richard, you're late. We want to know is whether this actually works. Does it work, smacking children?
Yes, I think so.
How?
Well, on the way down here in the car, my grandson, who's 3, was destroying the cab driver's car.
Pardon me?
It.
My car?
He was kicking it. He was kicking. Repeatedly told not to kick, keep his feet still, didn't. And I smacked him on the leg.
Shame on you.
Oh.
No.
You haven't listened.
Wrong with it at all. Nothing.
I smacked him on the leg. He
Nothing
looked at
wrong
me
with that
because
at all.
I very rarely do it. And he looked at me and he went, "Can I come to your house, Nanny?" Oh, he was really upset with me smacking him on the leg.
Peter? Peter?
Well, of course...
Hang on, please, Ronnie, I can't get you from there, Peter.
Well, of course he would be upset. He may
No,
not have
what I'm
showed
saying,
it.
I'm being facetious. What I'm saying is, was so upset with me smacking him on the leg, he didn't even cry.
But there must be an
Margaret,
underlying reason
But
in
he
the
said,
first instance.
that instant, can I
Excuse
come
me,
to your
no,
house
Listen
There
to
now?
what
must
he's
be
saying.
an underlying reason in the first instance why the child felt he had to practice damage on the car. Perhaps he wasn't... Excuse me, in the first instance, we have to...
Hang on, please. One at a time. Margaret.
In this case here,
Listen,
for
listen
example,
to them.
the little girl involved
If I
clearly
could
had,
just-
clearly had a phobia, and that needed to be addressed. In your case, there must have been some reason why your grandson...
He was sitting in the car for an hour and a half.
He was sat in traffic.
He was totally bored. The dentist
So is it a good idea to smack him because he's bored?
We were saying no.
It's irrelevant.
Hang on. One at a time. Margaret, what were you saying?
If you know the child is going to behave in such a way when he's bored, why not do something to ensure he's not bored?
Sometimes even their own parents are boring. It doesn't matter how many times I sing to him, how many times I show him jigsaws or whatever. He's bored with me.
You don't show him a jigsaw, my dear.
You
You
play
work
with,
at it
play with jigsaws.
You
must be such a perfect parent, really, to say that.
Could I say, Robert, that my daughter...
Nobody's a
Hang on,
perfect-
please, Rachel.
Nobody's a perfect parent. Of course, we all try and entertain our children, but there are times when you can't keep them under control.
but this lady has
except for a
conceded.
short, sharp smack.
Yes.
This lady has
That's it.
conceded.
Yeah,
And how
she
can
is
you
aware
reason
of
with
Listen
it?
to each
How
other.
can you reason with an 18-month-old child? You can't reason with them.
Well, you can't
So you
smack them.
explain to them afterwards.
Exactly. If you can't reason, how can they understand?
How do we understand?
Come on.
Do you not think that's showing up a relationship if you can't communicate with your own child and you have to resort to the last resort?
No, it isn't.
No, because my daughter loves her dad.
Rachel, please.
It's discipline.
She loves
and
her dad.
Always is followed by a hug and an explanation, and they grow up knowing the rules. They know where they stand. They're safe. They have respect for their parents and adults.
No, they don't have respect, they have fear.
My children have no fear. I
My
brought
children
up
don't
four
fear me.
wonderful children, totally well balanced. I've never had to smack
Come down here.
recently.
Come down here. Come down here. I can't have you shut.
You need to give
Sit
them
there.
a little bit
Sit
of
there.
time.
Sit down.
A little bit of looking after. There's no point in telling them. How can you tell an 18-month-old child that they're wrong or whatever? At the end of the day, they're bored.
How
They
many
need a little
children
bit of
have you got?
stimulation.
You're not bored.
They're looking at you. They're seeing you do things. My son wants to put on my makeup sometimes. My son wants to wear my shoes. At the end of the day, you've got to let him do that.
Calm down. Calm down. Let's speak real.
Nobody enjoys smacking their children.
One at a
Need
time.
to do that. At the end of the day, you let them.
At the time, it's
Listen to her.
necessary. All of us only do what we can, what we think is the best at the time. And when my children were younger, I've got 4 well-balanced children. They have all been sat on odd occasions, and I've never had to do it for years because they know and they're fine.
Vanessa, you were brought up without... Hang on, please. Vanessa hasn't even spoken yet, and you're all interrupting and speaking over her. Does it work, not smacking? I was asking, does smacking work?
I'm definitely anti-smacking at any age of any children.
Please, come on. No, please, let her finish.
I mean, it's as the lady over there said, it's a good deal about your relationship with each other. I mean, you wouldn't, with your partner, you wouldn't go around slapping
Your mum and dad are sitting alongside you. It's Vanessa and Peter.
That's my stepfather.
OK, but mum and dad. And you've not been smacked? No. Never?
No. Good.
And you never... And it's not done anything to you that you're a better person for not being smacked, are you saying?
I think I've possibly got a bit more confidence than maybe children that had been smacked.
Right.
Rubbish.
Hang on, please.
If I could say
Hang on, please wait. Hang on a minute. Yeah?
My daughter.
Yeah, go on.
It's just, what has that got to do with being smacked or not? Whether you're a confident person or not?
I was smacked.
Absolutely nothing to do with it.
If I digressed or if I was...
Marlene, please. My God, I've never known such an unruly lot. I'm anti-smacking. You're making me change my mind here. What were you saying to Vanessa?
I'm
Please,
saying
Marlene.
you said that you were a confident person and maybe more than if you'd been smacked, but why? What has that got to do with anything, really?
Well, I always get the feeling that children, if they make any mistakes, always have it at the back of their minds that they're going to get hit for their mistakes or
well, they learn the right way and wrong way. If it's necessary to keep them out of danger as well.
I wonder, do people not think that children are smacked just because it's innate in our society? It's a Christian belief that children are given the rod. Personally, I'm completely opposed to it. I think people don't question their own creativity, their own futuristic idea.
What does that mean?
The fact that these are the children of the future. And if my mother ever laid a hand on any of my children, that would be war between my mother and my... No, I've got 5 children. I've very occasionally, on very odd occasions, smacked the eldest two who are both in their 20s. I regret that.
You smacked them in the 20s?
They're both in their 20s.
Oh, when did you smack them?
When they were young children, because I'm a British citizen and I was taught...
Oh.
Because I didn't know any better, because I didn't question what I was doing. But now I've had 5 children. My last child, I looked into her face and I've never, ever smacked her. And I think people forget too quickly how precious, how beautiful, how close to your heart, and they're the most important thing.
We're having a bit of an unruly conversation here this morning. Would you believe it, about smacking, which obviously arouses very, very strong passions, because people here feel very strongly about whether or not it's acceptable to smack your child. And many of them, as you see, feel very clearly that it is perfectly proper, right, sensible and effective means of disciplining a child. What age do you start doing that then, Alan? Is it acceptable to smack children under the age of 5?
I'm a father of 6. My youngest is now 2, so I'm having to think back a bit. From about the age of 15 months to 12 months, I'll give you an example if I may.
12 months to 15 months?
Yeah.
Yeah? 12 months.
I'll give you an example if I may.
Hang on, please.
If, say, the child is sitting there, this is my youngest son, Michael, sits on my left at tea time. He has a food. He's got into the habit of pushing the plate away at the end of the mealtime.
What age?
15 months, start out.
15
pushing the plate
months.
away. Now, I would say to him, Michael, I don't want you to push that away because that makes the rest of us feel like we're servants to clear up after you. And I put it back. I've explained the moral reason why behind the command. And then, if he does it again, it then becomes an act of willful disobedience against a reasonably given command.
Please, let him finish.
And at that point, the smack comes in. Once he does it, so if at the next meal time he pushes it away, that's not willful disobedience. That's childish irresponsibility, forgetting what's gone before. We push it back and say, no, Michael, we don't want to be treated like servants who clear up after you by pushing your food away. And then he has once in the last 6 months pushed it away again because he's learnt.
Richard.
The problem...
You're looking very... Don't talk to me, you talk to him. You're looking very distressed all the time when he's talking.
The idea of hitting children as young as that...
You've chosen the word hitting rather than smacking.
Or you've chosen the word smacking rather than hitting.
Yes.
Because you choose the word deliberately sounds less evocative
than hitting. You could say you're beating.
If you ask
well, you are beating, aren't you? You are beating somebody.
If you ask children domestic violence, is this lady down there saying?
Go on, Richard.
If you ask children themselves, as a lot of surveyors have,
Richard?
I'm a father of 1, a 3-and-a-half-year-old. If you ask children themselves what it's like to be smacked, they describe it overwhelmingly as a hard hit. And if you ask children, they will say a smack is what adults call a hit to make themselves feel less guilty about what they've done to you. Smacking is... It's simply what we call hitting to make ourselves feel better about it.
Okay.
Now, the problem is, I think, is that at some level, in the short term, it works. So many people have heard people say it stopped him destroying the taxi or it stops them pushing their plate away. In the short term, then using your enormous physical power by comparison to the child will stop them doing the thing that you don't want them to do at that particular moment in time. But in the long run, what you've done is established that the only way you can ultimately stop them doing what you want them to do is by using physical violence against them. And in the long run, if you really want to win your children's respect, then you don't resort to physical violence and you bring them up in such a way that they don't think that that is the only way
That's interesting what you say it's the only way. When I come home after work, I don't say to my kids, I had a real argument at work today, I gave them a good kicking round the corner. When I say, when you're disagreeing with friends at school or at church, don't give them a kicking, they understand that violence is not a solution.
Why do you use it then? Why do you use it then?
In a solution of willful disobedience to a reasonably given parental command. You've got to finish the sentence. Context is everything, Robert. Violence is an appropriate response.
Not the child's.
Appropriate response to deliberate willful disobedience against a reasonably given command, issued with the moral reason why, so they understand why you're doing this. Don't treat us like servants, Michael, and push it away.
Is that acceptable?
No, it can never be acceptable to smack a child under the age of 5 or over the age of 5 or smack anybody.
Well done.
No, never acceptable.
May I ask why?
Hang on, please, Margaret. Yes, go on. You're asking why. Margaret, hang on.
Sorry. Well, because it doesn't work. It patently doesn't work. And if you as a parent have to smack your child, there are so many other ways
it's one
to
of
discipline.
many issues, you're right. One of many ways to discipline, you're right. It's not the silver bullet. Smacking is not the silver bullet. You need to have a loving home environment, reasonable commands given once, acceptable boundaries, consistency, agreement with spouse in public on policy with the children. It's not the silver bullet. If you smack, there's no guarantee your kids will be fine.
So why, you've got all those things right, why go to the last one and say smack? Because if you've got all those in place, then you can actually find that your child will behave absolutely perfectly without a smack.
What do you do with a 15-month-old who push it away after you said to put it back?
Is it acceptable? Is it acceptable to smack children under the age of 5?
You're then training them to treat you as a servant at the table.
Alan,
That's what you want to do.
15-month-old please.
Is it? Come on. Please.
You're probably asking a person now that's going to have one view. I was smacked as a child. Smacked, not hit, not beaten. I was smacked as a child. I do know that my parents were given the occasional smack as well as my grandparents. I, in turn, as a last resort, after trying the time out, trying to reason with the toddler having a tantrum on the floor, do give a smack on the bottom. Now, people are saying that you may become, grow up to be violent. I am definitely not violent. I would walk away from a situation rather than retaliate. It's my nature. My parents are the same, and so are my
Why do you smack a child, then?
As I said, it's a last resort. I try the other options, but, I mean, just as an example, my younger one, which is 5, I actually found that the periods of maybe ages 3, 4, 4.5 were the most difficult periods for him. I have a daughter as well. They'd have a tantrum. It would start at the supermarket. It would carry on all the way home. It would be something silly like a packet of crisps. He'd want a packet of crisps. I'd only have a Visa card with me. I'm not charging that to the card. Something like that. I'd have to carry him inside, try and sit him down, try and reason with him. Now you've got this little kid that's kicking and screaming. He's not hearing a thing that I'm saying. He's having his tantrum. So you think, right, pick him up, put him on the bed. You're going to try now the time out. So you walk out the room, he starts throwing things at the door, kicking on the door. Now you're going to say, oh, probably a violent household. My husband and I have an excellent relationship. We don't even argue, really. It's just a very relaxed home environment. So now you go in there, it's rented accommodation, this child's damaging the door. so he gets a smack on his bottom, and he stops and he looks at me, because I probably think for me as well, growing up, it was the embarrassment of the smack. There was no pain involved at all.
What's wrong with that, Kate?
Well, there's nothing wrong. You know, all young children go through a phase of having tantrums. Unfortunately, it's part of their development. But what it's not teaching, it's stopping that action in the short term, and it's relieving the parent of a very embarrassing situation. But I don't know if you notice now, if you go in a supermarket, parents are looked at if they're smacking a child, and they're looked at if they're not smacking a child, and nobody knows what to do. And I think we need to be absolutely clear.
What is acceptable here? Is it acceptable?
I don't think it's acceptable at all. What I think we need to do is actually think what is acceptable to how we want to raise children. If you talk to parents today, they're worried about violence in the media, they're worried about violence in the playground, they're worried about violence that they see on TV, and where do the children learn the first place for violence? It's in the home.
You're to blame. You're teaching them violence in the home.
No, we're not to blame. No parents are to blame.
Oh, they're not to blame.
No, they're not to blame. Let's be absolutely clear about this. This is a cultural issue. We have all been raised.
So parents have no responsibility now, do they?
Of course they do, but what they have is a responsibility.
Well, they're to blame then.
They have a responsibility to think very carefully, all of us, about what we're doing to our children. And what we're doing is actually teaching them how to be tough, and when they want to find out how to settle an argument, they can learn that if they're bigger.
So you're to blame for teaching them to settle an argument with violence.
Oh, they'll sit in the corner.
No, I just that's what she would do.
You what?
I think it's totally distorted. It really is. To say honestly...
Katie's saying she doesn't like the word blame, because nobody likes the word blame now, because we all avoid responsibility for everything, because that's what we've got, an irresponsible society.
That's not what I said.
Effectively, she is saying that parents are worried about violence on television, in the streets, in the supermarket, everywhere else, and parents who hit their kids are teaching them that violence is acceptable.
No,
that's what Katie's implying.
Can I ask what she would actually do in that situation, though?
All right.
Well, I've worked with over about 2,000 parents and carers across the country who do not like smacking.
No, but can I ask you?
Can I tell you what they do? I'm telling you. What we do is we do not focus, it's very complex, we do not focus in this country on how children behave well. We concentrate on their bad behaviour.
She asked you what you do.
What you do when you've got a child with a tantrum in the supermarket is you stay with that child and you hold that child firmly and securely until they stop. And they will Please, if you really think they're hitting a child, if you really
This is my question. It's still not.
Well, it has.
I think. What would you do in her situation when he's
really
kicking the
blown out
door?
of proportion. I've got a 4-year-old daughter, okay, who's very like me. She's got stack loads of attitude. I don't agree with smacking children under 2. All right? I'm a child.
What if they're one day over 2?
Sorry?
What if they're one day over 2?
It happens when it is appropriate and when it is necessary.
You're a childminder.
I'm a childminder. I worked in childcare, from foster care into EBD schools.
And you're not allowed to smack.
And you're not allowed to smack, right? So that caused me to think of other ways to work with children other than smack. Yes. Now, I believe that I'm pro-smacking.
So you don't smack the children you care for, but you smack your own children.
Right. No, hang on.
So your child is a lesser person than the others?
No.
Why can you manage one set and not your own?
No, I don't. I haven't. I've smacked my daughter once since she has been born, and she's 4 years old, because I don't need to smack her. What I disagree with is some politician or somebody else, right, turning around and telling me, OK, what I can and can't do in my own home. No, I don't smack. I childmind. It's the only childcare facility where you are allowed to smack the children with the parents' permission, and it would be written permission, OK? So I will have that on the back burner all the time. I don't need to smack any of my children, because as soon as Auntie Rachel looks at them or raises her voice, they do what they're told. But don't tell me what I can and can't do in my own house with my own daughter. If it warrants, I was smacked.
But we do tell you all the time. We tell wives they can't beat their husbands, husbands they can't beat their wives. We tell you all kinds of things. Why can't we tell you you can't beat your children? Richard, please, Richard.
These arguments are exactly the arguments, almost word for word, that were used when they were considering legislation to forbid men from beating their wives. Everyone knows the phrase rule of thumb. You say rule of thumb. Do you know where that comes from? Yes. It used to be, it's the thickness of the rod that the husband was allowed to beat his wife with. Anything up to the thickness of a...
What I think the problem is
in
society...
In 50 years' time, we will find it unbelievable that we were having this debate in exactly the same way that we find it now unbelievable that men were allowed legally to beat their wives inside their... or hit their wives inside their own home.
And I am not disagreeing with you. What I have a problem with in childcare and in society in general is that you've got child abuse on one end, which is totally wrong, right? And you've got a discipline problem on the other end. You've got kids smacking their teachers about. The police can't touch them. The parents aren't allowed to touch them now, right? And you have not found a compromise in the middle between discipline and children and child abuse. You've got this messy, stupid little grey area.
Of course.
Where if you tell a child off, you give it a smack, you tell that child, or a teenager, the worst, you do that again, all right, you're going to be told off.
We have grey areas with adults as well.
You're wrong for doing that, you're wrong for smacking them, you're wrong for shouting at them. And you've got kids going around doing whatever the hell they like, saying, you can't touch me, I'll have you up for assault. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous.
Richard,
do you think...
So what are you going to do?
Richard,
do you think that men should be able to hit women?
No.
No, OK, right. So we've established something there. But there is a huge...
Please, Rachel, we can't... Please.
There is a huge...
God, this is worse like being at school. All these unruly pupils in the back row. Richard, please.
We've established that it is wrong for men to hit women, or vice versa, OK? It's wrong for women to hit men. Now, we know that can mean any number of things. It can mean you discovered that your boyfriend's cheated on you, and in the pub, you slap him around the face. It can mean anything from that to severe beatings within the home over a series of years. It can mean anything between those two extremes, and there's a huge grey area in between. Now, the law of the land protects adults from assault. So, in theory, if I slap someone around the face, I am guilty of assaulting them. But nobody's ever going to bring that case to trial. We all realise that there's a grey area, that we're all human.
You seem to be very upset with what Richard was saying.
Well, yes, I'm a foster carer. I mean, I've fostered 28 children over the past 4 years. I've got 2 children of my own, and I've got a 7-year-old boy, and I've had age groups from sort of babies up to teenagers. Now, I have smacked my children. I don't do it all the time, obviously. I mean, it depends on the situation. It depends on a lot of things. But I find I have to use an alternative if both my foster child and my own child are doing the same thing, that it is, you know, it is equally as bad. Then obviously I wouldn't smack my child because I can't smack a foster child. So therefore I would find an alternative punishment or way of disciplining the children, because I don't think that it's fair that I should smack my children when the other foster child...
And do you find an alternative?
Yes, I do.
Well, if you find an alternative on that occasion, what you're saying is, instead of you taking out the easy option of smacking your child...
I wouldn't say it's easy option.
Well, it is in this case, because you're being... You've just admitted that.
Yes.
You're saying, you are in effect saying, you are now being forced to think, to look, to search, to find an alternative. That's harder than just slapping. And you find an alternative.
I do on some occasions, yes.
Well, but if you can find the alternative then, perhaps the onus is upon you to find the alternative for your own children on all the occasions.
Children will push the boundaries to the limit.
Stop putting words in her mouth, Selina. Selina, stop putting words in her mouth.
No, the thing is, I mean, I've had, as I said, all ages of foster children, and I mean, if my son has misbehaved and he has had a tap on the leg or something, the foster children will go, your mother's allowed to smack you, she's not allowed to smack me. And they know it. And a lot of the foster children in my care, if they'd had a smack before coming to me years ago when they were younger, they wouldn't be doing some of the things
Can I answer both these questions? I have been married over 50 years. I have 2 sons who now are 40 and 50.
You don't
In fact, I've been married 53. Now, no, they are entirely different. As little children, as babies, from 6 months, they were different. The oldest one, you only had to say something. He was idyllic. If you said, don't do it, he didn't do it, right? But the other one, and whatever, you know, he was good. But the second one was absolutely defiant. And the only thing
Daddy's nodding assent.
was a smack on the leg.
He screamed so much that when he was 4, he broke his vocal cords and had a deep voice.
Because you smacked him?
No, because he was screaming so much that he was doing himself an injury. The only way I stopped him was to smack his leg, take him up to the bedroom, put him in his bedroom, close the door and said, when you stop screaming, please, you can come down.
Well, it seems to me as if he was doing enough damage to himself, actually, without you adding to it.
No, even when he got... because he was a screamer. If I went to go in a shop, he would scream. Everybody would look at me, and he would scream and scream.
How old is he now?
He is 40 now.
He's going to love you, isn't he, for saying all this?
He would have appeared on this programme. He would have appeared on this programme. He is a delightful son. We have a great love. The 2 boys, the one I didn't hit, could be aggressive now. Yeah. The younger one would not. He manages vast numbers of staff, right? And he is very considerate, understandable, and he's the most kindest, nicest boy or man that you could ever reach. The other one can be who was never smacked. Has an aggressive nature. It is in the child. It is in the child. It is what the child is.
I think it is obviously, it is crazy for anybody to say that being hit as a child, that any child who's been smacked is going to end up violent or in some way there's something wrong. This is not a black and white situation. You cannot, it is wrong for people from either side to say it is always right to smack, or for people who are anti-smacking to say, and I don't think it is right to smack, I don't think it's acceptable, and I think we should be moving away from it. That doesn't mean, I think, that any parent who has smacked a child once or twice has kind of consigned their child to a life of misery. It's ridiculous to go to those sorts of extremes. Or that they're a bad parent, because parents make mistakes in all kinds of other areas too.
All the time.
What I don't understand about all these people who want to interfere in other people's lives, what I don't understand, Robert, I'm probably one of the older ones amongst you here. I'm 74.
Oh, great. Now they're going to argue about who's the oldest.
I'm just trying to convey a point.
Don't make another point, because we'll have somebody else.
I'm one of 10.
Yep.
I'm the 8th one. I don't remember my parents hitting me, and I had every respect for everything.
Because that's probably because you respected your parents anyway, and you were probably more afraid of their disapproval.
And it begins at home.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer, if a child is bad at school, they should tell the parents and they should deal with it. And that's the way I feel. It was always like that, and that's how it should be.
Let's come on to the schools. And before we do, Kate, I suppose I ought to declare a very clear interest here, because it's on the record that I am a patron, whatever, of an organisation that believes in stopping smacking children. I believe that very clearly. I'm very biased. But what I hope I'm being this morning is also fair. Our friend there said... I am. Thank you, Alan. Our friend there talked about schools. Should we allow... We've been talking about whether or not parents should smack their children, and if so, at what age. Should we allow teachers to smack our children?
Yes.
Please.
My question. We should allow it, yes, but we shouldn't particularly encourage it. I think that smacking should very rarely be used either in school or at home. You don't need it very much, but it should certainly be allowed. The alternative, or in schools, I'm afraid, and this is what has happened in schools, is that increasing number of children are actually being expelled from schools because that is the only ultimate sanction that teachers have. Now, that is the worst thing you can do to a child.
What, to exclude it from school?
Yes, and I mean, one headmaster I know, has said I'm a school governor, and we do have these terrible situations in which we have to get rid of children from the school because they're disrupting the school, because perhaps they are violent, right. They may be bringing weapons into schools.
What age would you slap them?
Slapping, oh, gosh... very rarely, perhaps in a primary school, certainly not in a nursery. Very, 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 very rarely.
So we're talking about...
we should not prohibit it.
Well, you're talking about, what, 15, 16-year-olds?
I'm also thinking about secondary schools.
Well, that's what, 15, 16-year-olds?
Yes, no, I'm sorry, yes, I am.
You slap a 15, 16-year-old?
No, I'm not about slapping. I'm talking about something more formal. I'm talking about more formal physical punishment, very rarely used as a last resort.
Hang on, what's more formal? The cane?
It's probably going to be something like that. It's got to be something like that. Very, very...
Why don't we have another
Excuse me.
Let's just finish the whole program.
Hang on, Katie,
excuse me.
Hang on, Marley, we're not going to stop Listen, we'll have the Third World War here in a minute.
The alternative is children on the streets. Can we just make that clear?
No, I'm a
children on the
teacher.
streets.
I teach 11 to 18-year-olds, in fact, now 11 to 16-year-olds. Most of the lads are 6-footers that I teach. It would be ludicrous for me to stand there with a belt or a cane. That we teach children that to use their fists is not the way to deal with things. How could I possibly bring children in from the playground, I'm dealing with a fight, and then I say to them, well, I'm now going to cane you for attacking that boy outside. It's nonsense,
So what do you do? Do you expel them from school?
You're using the word expelled. We use permanent exclusion.
Exclude is the word. Exclude is the word.
No,
It's the same thing.
Yes, she expels them.
I don't have that authority. Yes, but wait a minute. If we go down the route of exclusion, there is internal exclusion, first of all. There's fixed-term, external
Sounds like internal
exclusion.
exile.
But if a child, very rarely, very rarely, a child is permanently excluded or expelled. If that is the case, 99 times out of the 100, in my personal view, it's good for that child because the child should not be in mainstream education.
Children all over the country are being excluded from school who could otherwise be contained if they could be punished within school. That, in my view, is
teacher. I'm not a prison
I'm
warder.
a school governor and I'm a parent. You know, that's my view.
Too. But I'm not in the business of containing children. We're there to educate children. Teachers are there so that children
they
can
won't be
learn.
educated on the streets.
They shouldn't be on the streets.
At school, I was one of the lads, if you like. I got caned, I got smacked, everything else. Every time I got the cane, I knew why I got the cane, because I was being disruptive, I was being wrong, I was whatever. Never did me no harm whatsoever.
How do you know?
No, I did it again. It's done me the reason it's done me no harm. The reason it's done me...
How do you know what sort of a person you would have been if you hadn't been
The reason it's done me no harm now.
Oh, that's how do you know?
I've no visible
Does anybody
scars.
know what they're going to be from 20 years ago?
So how can he say it did him no harm?
Exactly, so how can you say he isn't going to be a bad person?
I have...
Stop you doing it. She didn't stop you doing it.
At the end of it didn't stop. Can't get you from there. It didn't stop. Hang on, Selina. Do you know, I haven't heard a word he said yet. Everybody's jumped down his throat, but I haven't heard a word.
It didn't
I'm going
stop.
to let him finish a sentence.
Fine, it didn't stop me doing it, because I was with the clique that's right. I was one of the lads, I was the leader or whatever. So I was... If I was doing wrong, I knew that I would get the cane.
So you're happy for your kids to be smacked?
I've got 5 lads, 24 down to 18. When they was at school, they were smacked at school. I went to the schools and I said, if they are disruptive or they are behaving badly, by all means smack them. Come and tell me.
Saying that to me, but I am not in the business of hitting children. I didn't come into education to strike a child.
But you've got control of that child for 8 hours. You've got control of that child, so you're telling me if my child is in your class and my child is being disruptive and disrupting the full class, you don't want to take the responsibility to check that child. Yes, you are. Yes, you are, because you're saying that child, while that child is being disruptive in class, everybody else is taking notice of that child and not you. So the only thing you can do, I've got 3 boys and I don't mind my child being smacked at school when the need is there. Because if he's disrupting, I wouldn't want you teaching my son. That's how bad it is.
Wait a minute. No, I'm sorry.
Please, Marlene.
What you are doing is you are accused. You're accused.
There's got to be discipline. There's got to be discipline at home and discipline at school.
Alison.
No, because the teacher's not talking nothing. Rubbish.
Behave yourself. Let the teacher answer. I'm glad you're not in my
That's why if you're a student, they're not letting the teachers rule out the kids are doing it.
How would you deal with her? How would you deal with her?
How can you leave me?
You've got to find an alternative way of teaching.
She'd walk out and leave me.
No, most certainly.
We'll all walk out and leave you.
Yeah,
exactly. No, there are other strategies you can use. You said to me that I wouldn't check your child. I mean, I presume you mean that I wouldn't take issue with what you're doing. Of course I would take issue. I am a strict disciplinarian, but I don't think that the way you discipline children is to hit them in a school. There are
Would you find it acceptable for teachers to discipline by smacking or caning a child?
No, absolutely not. I was caned across the back of my hand when I was at school for doing nothing because the whole class got caned.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't believe in violence. I think violence begets violence. And at the end of the day, there are other ways of doing this. And I certainly would never expect a teacher that is there to educate my child to smack a child.
Let's get this man. He's going to have a...
You will all agree that the ultimate in violence is war, right?
Yeah.
Do we all agree on that? Yeah. Right.
Oh, he's from Liverpool. Oh, we're going to have trouble now.
Yes. Now,
come on, get to the point.
I'll get to the point. If we had not replied to Germany in 1939 for their violence, all these women here would probably be in a Nazi brothel today. Oh, right? Oh, yes, we would. Oh, yes, we would.
So you're saying violence is a deterrent?
Definitely. I'll tell you why, too, why I believe in it. When I was about 10, right, yeah, my mother would be crying. I would say, what are you crying for, Mum? I've got a headache. I realised later on, when I was getting older, that she was crying because she had nothing to put on the table, right? Yeah. Yes. I said, she's not going to cry no more. I went out. I had nothing. I never had shoes on my feet till I was 10. I saw this fella cutting boiled ham in the shop, and I said, I'm having that. When the lad came out with it, I smacked him and I pinched it. Honestly, God, I did. I took it home and I said, I found this boiled ham.
Now for Larry. Like they do.
I opened it on the table with all looking. Yeah. When he opened the bacon, it was bacon.
And what happened?
Now, he said, take it back to Mr. Boylan and tell him where you got it. And I told him, Mr. Boylan, the baker, said, the grocer said to me, I'm not going to punish you. You will punish yourself. You will remember that you made yourself a thief for £half a pound of bacon. Now then, I went back home.
Smacking.
You never smacked me.
No, I'm trying to bring you round to smacking.
I'll get there.
I've only got 3 minutes.
My father said to me, what did Mr. Boylan say? I told him what he said. I'll remember it till I'm as old as him. I said, that's daft, that, isn't it, Dad? I won't remember that. He said, no, but you'll remember this. and that is what stopped me being a thief.
No, Mr. Boylan! Mr. Boylan, stop it. Should we damage?
No. Well, the problem we've got is that the European Court of Human Rights has said that the government, and the government's accepted, that we do not give children the same protection from assault. And I accept that most parents here would not see what they see as a smack in the same way as an assault. But the problem is, how on earth do you describe what it is? How can you define it? It's impossible. So the government's going to have to consult, and it's going to have to come to a decision. And if we're not going to have arguments about whether a smack that gives a broken leg to a 2-year-old in the southwest, where a court was found a parent guilty, and yet another parent says, well, I only gave a light tap, but the child fell over, we're going to cause problems for parents and cause problems for children. And I think the only way is to have a clear, supportive programme of looking at different ways of managing children's behaviour for parents, combined with the ban for smacking.
Excuse me, if you... Parents, the one thing that every child desperately needs is to be controlled as well as love. Love and control are the two things that children need. If they're not controlled by one means or another, the child has to take control, or the state moves in.
You don't have to control with violence.
We will see the state moving into the family and taking control
of the children.
With child abuse. Well, we don't want any more of it. Parents should control their children.
Margaret.
It's a parent's duty.
People are damaged.
Loving duty.
They're invariably damaged because of what has happened to them in childhood, from repressive, violent parents
and control themselves and becoming bullies. Have you come across that?
Without dignity and without respect. And if parents taught their children that they respect them, and they treat them with dignity, then the children, in their turn, would treat other people like teachers
then it would be an ideal world, wouldn't it?
I like those words, dignity and respect. And of course we should treat people with dignity and respect. You know what my views are, so you have to take what I say with a pinch of salt. But I cannot but understand how it is unacceptable to hit an adult because that is regarded as assault. Indeed, it's a criminal offence. And yet we can hit a child. That, to me, is both anomalous and unacceptable. However, the law is there, and within the law, you have to decide what's right for you and what's right for your child. And no parent is a bad parent because they smack their children, because the parents here that are doing it are all ones that love and respect and treat their kids with dignity. Take care of yourselves.
If you'd like to join Robert in a programme about teenage fathers or another about divorce, call now on 0990 100 771. Are you a teenage father? Was your child's father a teenager? Is your teenage son about to become a father? Do you think teenage fathers should be responsible for their children? Secondly, did you wish your parents hadn't broken up? Has their divorce affected you in your adult life? Call too if your parents are happier now that they're apart.
We'll be talking about the dangers of relaxing on City Hospital this morning. 13-year-old Bryony keeps fainting, and doctors think it's because her brain is telling her to relax too much and at the wrong time. They're carrying out a special test today to find the cause. City Hospital in a few minutes' time, so please join us then.
Saw victory in the papers. Even victory costs lives.
For honour.
He lives to serve you, Mum.
For glory.
It'll all be over before you can turn round.
For love.
I think often of your sweet face. Now I shall kiss it when we next meet.
A mystery that brought the horrors of the Great War home to king and country.
Do you believe in the hand of God?
Maggie Smith.
Mimi niko Ng'obabee pamoja Ekwa Ashungu Himibii kazi kuicha